My name was Dr. Amir Rahman. I was a respected physician, revered in my community, a Muslim doctor navigating the bustling emergency room of a New York hospital. For years I hustled through life, saving lives, yet inside I was dying. Caught in the web of tradition, I followed the prayers and rituals, but all I felt was an unsettling emptiness, a gnawing doubt lurking in every whispered prayer and silent moment. Then came the day I faced the ultimate test, a moment that shattered my existence. In the heat of crisis, while fighting to save a life, I found myself slipping into darkness, a near-death experience that would unravel everything I thought I knew. I was enveloped by shadows, lost in a void, until suddenly a radiant light pierced through. And there he was, Jesus. He didn't just call my name, he pierced my soul. In that instance, the truth flooded in, a vast spiritual warfare I had been blind to. This was not merely a battle of ideology, but a profound manipulation veiled behind cultural and religious norms. I was shown the reality of my faith, a fear-based system crafted to bind, not liberate. I awoke not just from my physical state, but from a lifetime of fear. The moment I returned, however, was just the beginning of a new horror, the fear of being cast out, labeled a traitor. My family and community turned their backs on me. Who could I trust? How could I reveal the truth that had awakened my spirit and shown me true peace? In this video, I will share how the confrontation with Jesus led me down a path of exploration, a clandestine journey into Christianity that promised not just understanding, but the gift of freedom. Freedom from spiritual chains that had shackled me for so long. Before we dive deeper into this journey, I invite you to share in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. Let's connect across this vast landscape of truth. And if you love Jesus and want to hear more revelations that can change your life, subscribe to Truth from Beyond. This is not merely a story. It's your invitation to awaken alongside me. In the chaos of the emergency room, where lives hung by delicate threads, I worked as a doctor, rushing from one patient to the next. The atmosphere was thick with urgency and despair. The cries of families echoed through the sterile halls, punctuated by the sounds of medical equipment beeping incessantly. I had always found purpose in my profession, believing that healing was more than physical. It was a sacred calling. But beneath the surface, I felt a growing emptiness, a conflict brewing in my heart, as I navigated the demands of my role against a backdrop of cultural and religious norms that often stifled the very essence of that calling. One fateful night, a particularly harrowing case landed in my lap, a young man who'd been in a devastating car accident. As I worked to stabilize him, I felt an overwhelming sense of dread washing over me. In the chaos, I silently prayed, pleading for clarity and strength. But what happened next transcended anything I had ever known. In that moment of profound stress, I felt my consciousness shifting, dragging me into a whirlpool of light. Suddenly, I was swept away from the oppressive realities of the emergency room and found myself in a vast, illuminated expanse. Standing there was Jesus, radiating love and compassion, and I was gripped by the overwhelming sense that he was here to guide me. "Fear not, Idris." He spoke, and the very essence of his voice washed over me like a balm. In his presence, every doubt I had carried melted away, and I felt an incredible peace envelop me. Jesus began to illuminate truths about our world, revealing the hidden agendas of those who manipulate us, the elite who thrive on division and deception. I witnessed how faith, in its purest form, had been twisted into a weapon to control the masses, sowing discord rather than unity. The realization that the spiritual war waged against us was not just a battle for individual souls, but a struggle for the essence of our collective humanity, struck me deeply. With every revelation he shared, I saw the threads of society, how wars are instigated not just for land or power, but to serve the agendas of those at the top. I felt the weight of suffering that so many endure, caught in cycles of pain and confusion. I recalled the patients I had treated, each carrying their burdens, often reflective of the greater struggles faced by society at large. Jesus pointed out how technology, while ostensibly a tool for connection, could serve as a means of separation when wielded by those intent on maintaining their influence. I felt an awakening stirring within me, a compelling urgency to return and confront the deceptions that clouded my life and the lives of those in my community. As the light began to fade and the reality of the emergency room crept back into focus, I felt a jolt of urgency coursing through my veins. My experience could not simply be an isolated revelation. It demanded action. I understood that my calling as a doctor expanded beyond treating physical ailments. I was meant to share the deeper truths I had uncovered, to initiate conversations that could spark awakening in others. Yet, as I returned to my body, the weight of doubt settled in. Would my community accept this new understanding? Would they reject me as a heretic, knowing the struggle I had faced in reconciling my beliefs with the truths I had seen? As I resumed my duties, I saw the world through a new lens, patients crying out not just for medical help, but also for spiritual reassurance. I watched families navigate their fears, often clinging tightly to the very deceptions that kept them in conflict. The spiritual truths I now held felt like a fire within me, urging me to approach them differently, to offer more than medicine but to guide them towards both healing and awakening. My nights turned into silent prayers where I sought strength and clarity, preparing myself for the conversations that would inevitably come. I felt the whisper of Jesus within me, encouraging me to be a beacon of truth and light amid the chaos. I stood at the cusp of a transformation, aware that embracing this mission would demand courage, especially as I sought to evangelize those who were skeptical of any deviation from traditional beliefs. Each interaction became an opportunity to challenge the status quo, to invite others to question their own realities. The urgency of the spiritual war loomed closer, but so did the hope that together, engaged in authenticity, we could illuminate the path of awakening that Jesus had revealed to me. With each step, I felt an undeniable pull, a deep conviction that guided my heart, reminding me of the purpose that awaited on the other side of this journey. As Dr. Amir Rahman, I'm known in my community as a dedicated physician, someone they turn to in times of need. I've devoted my life to medicine, striving to make a difference in the bustling emergency room of a busy New York hospital. Day after day, I confront the harsh realities of life and death, working long hours and pouring my heart into every patient I encounter. Yet beneath that facade of professionalism lies a profound emotional emptiness, a vacuum that I struggle to fill, a conflict brewing within me as I navigate the rigid family traditions and expectations that weigh down on my spirit. The burden of adhering to these customs often feels heavy, creating a rift between my duty as a doctor and my growing disenchantment with the life I lead. It was during one chaotic night in the ER that everything changed. The room buzzed with urgency. I was in the middle of treating a young woman brought in after a car accident. Her condition was critical, and as I worked tirelessly to save her life, I felt a surreal moment overcome me. Suddenly, the bright lights of the hospital began to dim, and I found myself pulled away from reality, swept into an otherworldly experience. I remember feeling weightless, suspended in a space filled with brilliant light, and in that light I encountered Jesus. His presence radiated warmth and compassion, dissolving my fears and doubts. It was a moment where time seemed irrelevant, and the issues I had paced around in my mind melted away. In that extraordinary encounter, Jesus began to reveal profound truths to me. He spoke of the spiritual war that rages within our societies, forces working tirelessly to keep us divided and fearful, hiding behind a hidden agenda orchestrated by those in the elite. I witnessed visions that highlighted the manipulation of our beliefs, the ways leaders twist faith into tools for control rather than love, and the deception that permeates our systems. Each revelation both terrified and liberated me. I saw how war and strife aren't born from righteous causes, but are instead fueled by greed and fear, tearing apart families and communities. These realizations struck a deep chord within me, illuminating the collective suffering that I had witnessed daily in the ER. People caught in the crossfire of societal conflicts, struggling to see the connections between their struggles and larger systems of oppression. As quickly as the vision emerged, I felt myself being pulled back into the ER, the chaos of the hospital returning to focus. But I was forever changed. The desperation I felt from that young woman seeped into my consciousness. Right then, I understood that the insight I had gained was not meant to be stowed away. It demanded action. My heart raced with urgency. I could no longer stand idly by while my community clung to the shackles of deception. I began questioning how I could act on this revelation in my daily life. How could I help my patients find not just physical healing, but a greater understanding of the spiritual truths I had encountered? With each passing day in the hospital, I became increasingly determined to infuse my practice with this newfound perspective. I started looking for moments to engage my patients in conversations about their beliefs, gently guiding them to reflect on their own spiritual journeys. I witnessed how discussions around truth and awakening opened doors to healing that had little to do with my medical training. There were encounters where patients would share their fears, their disillusionment, and I would find myself sharing glimpses of my experience, speaking of the need to question the systems that bind us, and the importance of pursuing genuine understanding beyond the surface-level teachings we often accept. The bravery it took to confront these matters was palpable, and yet it felt absolutely necessary. But each step forward came with its own set of challenges. The fear of backlash from those who might see my views as heretical lingered in the background. I often remembered conversations with my family. What would they think if they knew? Would my father, who upheld our traditions so firmly, reject me further? This internal conflict played a significant role in my transformation. The hope for reconciliation taunted me even as I pushed forward. I felt the tension of the spiritual war within me, a battle between fear and the urgency to bring light into the darkness surrounding so many. Every moment became a choice. Would I let fear dictate my path, or would I embrace the calling that Jesus had revealed to me? And as I prepared to seek deeper connections with my community, I knew that the true test of faith was not just in believing, but in taking action to share the awakening that I had been blessed to experience. As I knelt in the quiet of my home for my daily prayers, the familiar routine began to feel strangely hollow, like an echo bouncing off the walls of my mind. Though the movements were second nature, A growing void gnawed at my spirit. I closed my eyes, reciting verses I had memorized since childhood, but the words felt unfulfilling, lacking the peace and connection I sought. Instead of solace, I found myself grappling with an unsettling question. Did the faith I had devoted my life to truly provide the peace and truth it promised? Amidst the devotion and the chanting, inner turmoil began surfacing, casting shadows on my previously clear beliefs. The unsettling dreams that haunted my nights only intensified these feelings. I would wake up, heart racing, from visions of disarray and conflict. Each dream felt increasingly apocalyptic, with imagery of wars, destruction, and a world at odds with itself. In those moments, I would sit bolt upright, drenched in sweat, feeling as though I was being thrust into a future riddled with uncertainty. The visions were vivid and terrifying, often accompanied by a shattering realization that they might reflect the spiritual war waging within and around me, a struggle hidden beneath the surface of everyday life, masked by pretense and tradition. In my waking hours, I had always focused on healing others as a doctor, but now I was forced to acknowledge my own unresolved fears and doubts. In the midst of this internal strife, I felt drawn to deeper exploration. There was a longing to understand the truths that seemed just out of reach, truths obscured by the weight of deception that enshrouded our society. I began to quietly question the narratives that shaped my understanding of faith, of peace, and of the world. How could I help others heal while I myself felt so empty? The pressure mounted as I watched my colleagues and friends cling to the very systems that fostered separation and fear. The elite's hidden agendas persisted in stifling the truth, keeping good people like them blind to the grander spiritual realities. I felt an urgency to awaken not only myself but those around me, to illuminate the conscious awakening I believed was essential. And then it happened. One fateful night, as I grappled with yet another vivid and unsettling dream, I reached out in desperation. I found myself in a profound state of surrender, a moment when I felt the boundaries of my reality blur. Almost as if by divine intervention, I entered a realm of light. Standing before me was Jesus, radiating an unconditional love that filled every space within me. In that moment, all my fears and doubts fell away, and a profound revelation washed over me. He began to unveil layers of hidden truths about society, about the spiritual deception that had held both me and my community captive. Each word pierced my heart, promising awakening in a reality dominated by fear. As Jesus expounded upon the nature of the spiritual war, I experienced a flood of clarity. I saw how the fabric of our society had been woven with strands of division and anxiety, how individuals were kept apart through manipulation and deception. I witnessed the apocalyptic visions from my dreams come to life in vibrant detail. The struggles of families torn apart by mistrust, communities battling against false narratives, fed by those in power. At that moment, it was as if I was granted a glimpse into the very heart of humanity's plight. The urgency to break free from these shackles coursed through me, revealing my path forward. Would I choose the safety of silence, or would I risk everything to share the truth I had come to know? As I returned to the waking world, the impact of that experience ignited a fire within me, igniting an unwavering desire to share my revelations with others. I understood that the journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, especially as I would inevitably face backlash from those entrenched in their beliefs. Yet, as I prepared to devote myself to this mission, I felt stronger than ever. Each question I had battled against found its resolution. The truth of Jesus and the awakening I had encountered demanded to be heard. I knew I had a responsibility, not just to embrace my own freedom, but but to help others discover their own paths away from the deceptions we had long accepted. As my heart pounded in anticipation of this new chapter, I felt that the real battle for truth was only beginning. As I stood in the emergency room, a typical night shifted into something extraordinary. We were overwhelmed with patients, each bringing their own desperate tales. My focus was sharp, adrenaline coursing through my veins as I moved from one critical case to another. However, when a particularly gravely injured patient was wheeled in, everything changed. As I worked feverishly to stabilize him, a wave of fatigue washed over me, and I felt myself slipping away from reality. It was as if the very air was drawn out of the room, and in a heartbeat, I was gone, drifting into a void that felt both haunting and enlightening. The darkness enveloped me completely, and for a moment I was adrift, lost in an unsettling stillness. My heart raced as I struggled to understand what was happening, and then, just as abruptly, an intense light pierced through the shadows, illuminating the void around me. It was a radiant light that seemed to wake every part of my being. In the heart of that brilliance stood Jesus, his presence both awe-inspiring and deeply comforting. Amir. He called my name, and in that moment I felt a connection that transcended everything I had ever known. It was a moment of truth unraveling before me, a revelation that would change the course of my life forever. In his presence, deception began to dissipate, revealing layers of hidden agendas that I had accepted without question. Jesus spoke of the spiritual war that was raging, not just in the world around me, but also within my own heart. He showed me visions of how the elite manipulate faith to maintain power, how they craft narratives meant to divide us and keep us in a state of confusion. I could see wars being fought, not in the name of righteousness, but as means of control and oppression. For the first time, I understood the weight of societal manipulation on a grand scale. The conflicts I had watched unfold on television, the divisions that festered in my community, were all intricately connected to this deeper struggle. As he shared these revelations, I felt a profound urgency to awaken, to realize the truth that had long evaded me. The weight of my responsibilities as a doctor began to surface. How often had I treated symptoms without addressing the spiritual ailments plaguing my patients? I was struck by the idea that my role extended beyond mere medical intervention. I could also serve as a vessel for truth and healing on a spiritual level. The light surrounding Jesus urged me to embrace this calling, to be a voice against the deception that kept so many trapped in darkness. But the fear of what that might mean for my relationships loomed large, threatening to pull me back into the shadows of doubt. In that incredible moment, I also realized that my awakening would demand courage, especially in a world that prizes conformity over truth. I thought about my family, my community, and the traditions I had been raised in. How could I integrate this new understanding into the life I had always known? The pressure felt suffocating. It was clear that I was at a crossroads. I could either return to my life, ignoring the revelations and the spiritual war unfolding around me, or I could embrace this new path, with all its risks and uncertainties. The truth carried with it a power that could potentially unite, but it also bore the weight of judgment from those who might see my awakening as a betrayal. As the light began to fade, I felt the warm embrace of Jesus reinforcing my resolve. The battle ahead would not be easy, but I was certain that sharing this truth was not only my duty but my divine calling. I returned to the emergency room, changed forever. The sounds of the hospital came rushing back in, but now I looked at my patients and colleagues with new eyes. This wasn't just about clinical diagnosis. This was about understanding the broader context of our existence. about recognizing that love and healing extend beyond the physical realm. My heart ached for those still ensnared by fear and deception, and I vowed to be a spark for awakening, igniting the fire of truth and shared humanity in all I encountered. After my recovery, I found myself navigating an emotional landscape that felt foreign yet all too familiar. In the wake of my transformative experience with Jesus, I had hoped for understanding, maybe even support, but what I faced instead was a harsh rejection. My family and community, once a source of pride and belonging, now regarded me with suspicion and disdain. They labeled me a heretic, a traitor to the faith I had spent my life upholding. Each whispered judgment stung, leaving me with a profound sense of isolation and self-doubt. In their eyes, I was no longer the accomplished doctor, the devoted son. I was an outsider in my own life, battling against a tide of condemnation. The emotional turmoil was overwhelming. I wrestled with guilt for abandoning the beliefs that had shaped my identity, and guilt for not being the person my family expected me to be. The tension between my new life and the old was suffocating, leaving me feeling like I was constantly walking a tightrope. I was desperately trying to reconcile my experience of awakening with the rigid expectations of my upbringing. Doubts seeped into my thoughts like water through cracks in a wall. Was I really embracing the truth, or was I simply being misled by my own desires? As fear swept over me, I often pondered what it meant to lose my identity amidst the turmoil of self-discovery. Even in moments when I sought solace, the shadows of loneliness crept in. I'd find myself sitting in silence, recalling the warmth of Jesus' presence during our encounter, and trying to hold on to that light. Yet the world outside seemed to pulse with darkness, riddled with the very deceptions I had come to realize permeated our society. I witnessed the struggles of my patients, families torn apart within the waiting room while upholding a facade of togetherness. It struck me that they too could be trapped in a spiritual war, caught in cycles of suffering without realizing the hidden agendas at play that fueled their pain. I ached to help them, yet my own struggles left me feeling hollow. As those thoughts churned within me, I turned to prayer, searching for guidance and clarity. My heart cried out for strength to face the harsh realities of rejection. I imagined Jesus standing beside me, filling the emptiness with hope and encouragement. In my prayers, I asked for the courage to advocate for truth despite the fear that gripped my soul. I recalled his teachings about love and compassion, reminding myself that I was part of a larger battle against manipulation and division. I could not let fear dictate my actions. The world was desperate for awakening, and I felt compelled to play my part, even if it meant walking a lonely road. With each passing day, I began to reframe my narrative. I wanted to turn my pain into purpose, believing that perhaps my experiences could become a testament to the transformative power of faith in Jesus. I yearned to connect with like-minded individuals who shared my vision, a collective awakening against the deception birthed from hidden agendas. I sought solace in small gatherings, spaces where individuals could explore their own journeys without fear of judgment. Together, we sought to unravel the deeper truths that lay hidden beneath layers of societal conditioning, discussing everything from the manipulation of technology to the conflicts that ravaged our communities. Yet, the journey ahead was daunting. I understood that confronting these issues would not come without resistance. The moment I stepped into the light of truth, I knew that shadows would follow. My family's rejection echoed loudly in my heart, reminding me of the high cost of awakening. Still, I felt an undeniable pull to share the love and revelations I had received. I wanted to demonstrate that love is transformative. that every soul can find freedom amidst the spiritual war that continues to grip our world. As I prepared to embark on this path, I held tightly to the hope that one day my family would understand this new journey and join me in seeking the truth together. In my quest for truth, I embarked on a journey I never imagined I'd take. As a Muslim doctor in a bustling New York ER, my life had always been rooted in service, healing those who suffered around me. Yet, after my encounter with Jesus, a profound emptiness settled in, compelling me to explore the very foundations of my faith. Each day, I would return home, exhausted from the emotional toll of the job, and instead of finding solace in my prayers, I felt a growing disconnection. I began to seek answers in secret, delving deeply into the teachings of Christianity, something that felt both thrilling and terrifying. There was a nagging fear that if anyone found out, it would shatter the delicate life I had built and cost me dearly in terms of family and community relationships. With each passing day, I immersed myself in the Bible, consuming testimonies online of people who had walked similar paths. Their stories of awakening echoed my own inner struggles, and I felt both comforted and inspired. I pored over passages that spoke of love, grace, and spiritual warfare. I was struck by the notion that the spiritual war one faced was far larger than my individual conflicts. It was about a collective battle against the hidden agendas designed to keep us trapped and divided. Angels and demons were no longer just stories. They represented the very forces fighting for our souls. The more I learned, the more urgent the need became to unveil the deception that had clouded my perception of faith and community. One fateful night, I stumbled upon a clandestine support group that met discreetly to discuss spiritual awakenings. The moment I stepped through the door, I felt a surge of belonging and relief. Surrounding me were individuals from varied backgrounds, each carrying their own stories of transformation. We shared openly, discussing the fears that came with questioning the doctrines that had governed our lives for so long. I felt a renewed sense of peace wash over me as we connected, realizing I wasn't alone in this battle. We spoke about how the elite manipulate faith to maintain their power and control, sowing discord among communities by exploiting religion in a way that breeds division rather than unity. As I listened to their experiences, I began to grasp the implications of my own awakening. The revelations about the elite and their manipulation of society brought a chilling sense of clarity. We were living in a world rife with deception, where technology could ensnare us, creating echoes of isolation in a society that offers illusion instead of connection. I recognized the same patterns reflected in the lives of patients I treated. People lost in the chaos of their existence, unable to see beyond the veils cast over them. It became clear to me that addressing these issues went beyond personal empowerment. It was about fostering awakening in a collective consciousness, prompting action in a time of need. But even amid the support I found, the fear of exposure loomed large. I grappled with the thought of how my family would react if they learned of my shift, what my father would say if he knew I was exploring a faith outside our own. The struggle for acceptance was daunting, especially in a community where traditions are woven tightly into the fabric of identity. I feared being labeled a heretic, someone whose journey led them off the righteous path. Yet, the warmth of the truth continued to draw me forward, illuminating the darkness surrounding my fears and doubts. I understood now that choosing to embrace this new understanding meant risking everything I had known, but the pull of that radiant light was undeniable. With each passing day, I moved closer to a decision. The awakening wasn't simply about finding my own path. It was about igniting an awareness that could transcend the limitations of my previous life. In the small meetings with my support group, we discussed how to effectively convey these truths to others who remain trapped in ignorance. The urgency in our conversations filled the air, our hearts beating in rhythm with a collective hope for change. I began to feel buoyed by the spirit of awakening, motivated to be an agent of transformation within my community. This journey had become bigger than myself. It was a calling to illuminate the truth, a truth that had the power to bring healing not only to me but to those around me, giving rise to a new understanding of our shared humanity in this spiritual war. The moment I met Jesus, everything shifted. I had always prided myself on my steady hand as a doctor, the calm voice that reassured patients in the chaotic halls of the New York emergency room. But that night, as I faced a life-or-death situation, everything changed. In the midst of stabilizing a critically ill patient, a wave of exhaustion hit me like a physical blow. As I stumbled into the void of unconsciousness, I felt a force pulling me away from my body, transporting me to a brilliant expanse of light. There, in that radiant space, stood Jesus, and I felt the weight of my doubts dissolve as he spoke my name with a warmth that enveloped me entirely. In that surreal moment, I felt a flood of revelation pour into my soul. Jesus began to show me the truth about the spiritual war that rages silently around us. There, in the light, I saw fragments of reality, visions of people caught in divisions, suffering under the weight of a hidden agenda orchestrated by the elite. The manipulation of truth became clear, and I found myself grasping the depths of deception that had clouded my understanding of faith. I felt the enormity of my role as a healer shift. It wasn't merely about treating physical ailments, but also about confronting the spiritual suffering that many carried in silence. This revelation ignited a sense of purpose within me. I understood that I was being called to not only embrace my own awakening, but to share it with others who were still lost in the fog of untruth. Upon returning to my conscious self, the chaos of the emergency room flooded back, but everything felt different. The urgency I had felt before transformed into an unwavering determination to speak out against the deception that plagued my community. I watched the faces around me, and my heart ached for those who remained blissfully unaware of the hidden agendas that dictated their realities. The spiritual war we faced was too pressing to ignore. Each life I touched became a reminder of the battle for truth that was now raging not only outside but within my very being. I felt a compelling need to articulate what I had experienced, despite the fear that hung over my head like a dark cloud. But I also grappled with the fear of rejection from my family and community. I was acutely aware of the potential backlash that awaited me. To speak of my experience was to embrace the risk of being labeled a heretic, a betrayal in the eyes of my loved ones. The memories of my father's disappointment replayed like a haunting refrain, reminding me of the heart-wrenching cost of awakening. In those moments, I felt the chilling weight of familial ties threatening to pull me back into silence. Yet the flame of purpose continued to burn within me, urging me to confront my fears and share my revelations of spiritual freedom. I spent countless nights contemplating how to move forward. The pull to engage with my community was strong, and gradually, I began to seek pockets of openness. I found solace in gathering with like-minded individuals who had experienced their own awakenings, a clandestine group dedicated to exploring the truths that Jesus had laid bare before me. Together we shared our doubts and fears, navigating a path toward enlightenment and deepening our understanding of the manipulation we faced. Each gathering was an opportunity to fortify our resolve and challenge the systemic deceptions that clouded our reality. We dreamt of a movement born from awakening, the realization that if we joined forces, we could dispel the darkness of ignorance and division. The urgency to act continued to mount as I realized that abiding in silence was no longer an option. The world outside was rife with deception, and the spiritual war we faced demanded our engagement. I began to envision myself not only as a doctor but as a messenger of truth, advocating for love and understanding amid prevailing hatred and fear. It was a daunting responsibility, yet within every heartbeat I knew that it was necessary. My journey was not just my own. It was a call for all of us to awaken, challenge the constraints placed upon us, and embrace the truth that had the potential to transform lives. As I prepared to speak out, the path ahead remained uncertain, but my commitment to guiding others toward the light of awakening fueled my courage, igniting a passion that would not be easily extinguished. The moment I decided to leave my role as a doctor in the hospital, I felt a mixture of fear and exhilaration coursing through my veins. My life had long been defined by my commitment to healing others, but after the profound encounter I had with Jesus, everything changed. I realized that I could no longer serve as a vessel for truths that had betrayed me and others. The spiritual war one had witnessed was all around us, hidden agendas orchestrated by the elite manipulating our beliefs and maintaining control over the masses. I could no longer ignore how my own loyalty to the healthcare system kept me bound to a life that felt increasingly hollow. It was time to shed the past and embrace the journey ahead, even if it meant leaving behind my family ties that had grown toxic. In that moment of determination, I could almost hear Jesus' voice urging me to step into my purpose. I packed my things, preparing to break free from the chains of expectations and traditions that weighed upon me. There was an inherent sadness in leaving my familiar life, yet the promise of awakening filled me with a newfound strength. My identity as a physician was interwoven with my personal and cultural ties, but the warmth of the truth I had uncovered was inviting me toward a mission that transcended those identities. This was about illuminating the darkness that had clouded my community and prompted so many to live in fear and deception. I stepped out into the world ready to share the revelations that had changed me so profoundly. The path ahead was anything but clear. I was acutely aware that choosing to embrace these new beliefs would come with significant consequences, particularly regarding my connections with my family. The fear of their rejection lingered like a dark cloud. My father, a steadfast believer in traditional values, would never understand my journey, but in my heart, I felt a growing conviction that transformation was not just for me. It was for everyone caught in the grip of deception. Each day became an opportunity to engage with others, whether they were patients from my past or strangers who crossed my path. I began to speak openly about my experience and the light I found in Jesus, fanning the flames of spiritual awakening wherever I went. Every conversation felt like a stance in the ongoing battle of the spiritual war. As I shared my testimony, I could see the flicker of interest and curiosity in the eyes of those who had grown tired of the status quo. It was as if I were serving as a beacon, illuminating forgotten truths hidden beneath layers of fear and societal manipulation. Each interaction reinforced my conviction to stand firm against the deception that had held so many captive for too long. I encountered doubts and skepticism, yet rather than deter me, their curiosity fueled my resolve. It became clear to me that awakening could not be forced. It would come in its own time for those willing to seek the truth, yet the stakes were undeniably high. The threat of backlash loomed on the horizon, casting shadows over my endeavors. I feared that speaking my truth might lead to further alienation from those I loved, Every step I took venturing outside accepted beliefs felt like walking on a tightrope, balancing between courage and trepidation. What if my attempts to advocate for awakening resulted in severed ties with those I yearned to connect with? The emotional struggle nagged at my spirit. However, the thought of those still trapped in silence and pain propelled me forward. Each moment spent in authentic conversation felt like a sacred calling, a reminder that transformation often requires sacrifice. Through this journey, I began to notice profound changes, not just in myself, but in the hearts of those I engaged with. In sharing my narrative, I witnessed emotional shifts unfold as others began to reflect on their own journeys. Bonds formed over shared experiences began to flourish, igniting discussions around hidden agendas, manipulation, and the deep-seated fears we all confront. In doing so, I recognized the essential role I played within this awakening, entwining my fate with that of others in this spiritual realm. As I walked down this uncertain road, I held tightly to the truth. The battle against darkness is not fought alone, but together we can illuminate the path toward liberation and healing for all. Years after my awakening, I found myself flourishing within a new community, a group of passionate individuals who embraced the mission of sharing truth and fostering spiritual awakening. It was a breath of fresh air amid the chaos I had previously faced. My journey, which had begun with doubt and rejection, transformed into a powerful testimony that I felt compelled to share. Each gathering became a profound experience, where stories of struggle, healing, and revelation intermingled. I could see how my life had changed. It was no longer just about me, but about the lives I could impact, with the courage to stand up against the spiritual war that raged around us. Every day, I encountered individuals yearning for answers, searching for a glimpse of hope in a world filled with uncertainty. They walked in feeling burdened by their own hidden struggles, the weight of societal expectations, familial pressures, and spiritual disillusionment. I listened intently as they spoke, their voices echoing feelings I once held close to my own heart. Together we explored the hidden agendas that had perpetuated deception, tearing apart families and communities. I was grateful for the opportunity to share the love and understanding I had received through Jesus, and the revelations he had imparted about the manipulation that kept so many trapped in darkness. The complexity of navigating potential reconciliation with my family remained a constant in my mind. My father's disappointment still echoed in my heart, a wound that had not completely healed. Yet I felt a deep yearning to bridge the gap between my past and my present. I held on to the hope that one day he might understand the awakening I had embraced. Each conversation I had about spiritual truth and love became a piece of the puzzle I hoped would lead him toward acceptance. I believed that through love, understanding, and patience I might eventually find a way back into my family's heart, and they could join me in the mission to expose the deception that held us all captive. As I grew more involved in my community, I came face to face with the realities of spiritual warfare. The stakes felt incredibly high. Each interaction came with the reminder that the decisions I made could either strengthen the bonds with those around me or sever them completely. I saw how leaders often manipulated narratives to maintain control, using religion and fear to create divisions. I thought about how technology, which was hailed as a tool for connection, could also serve to perpetuate isolation. It was sobering to realize that our awareness of the societal structures shaping our lives was the key to fostering true unity. My pursuit of truth and openness motivated not only my own healing but offered a platform for others to do the same. With each sharing of my testimony, I felt the light of truth illuminate the darkness that enshrouded many in my life. I hoped that others would grasp the urgency of the awakening that was not only necessary for their personal journeys but was vital for collective healing. More than once, I would stand before a group, feeling the weight of expectation and nervous energy in the air. It was during these times that I recognized the necessity of embracing the journey together. We were faced not just with our own struggles, but with a fight against the very forces that sought to keep us divided. Each moment became an invitation to delve deeper into understanding, to act against complacency, and to advocate for love amid a world riddled with chaos. As I embarked upon this transformative journey, I mustered the strength to confront my inner turmoil and the longings for acceptance from my past. I knew that in order to truly embrace the mission ahead, I had to let go of the weight of expectation. My heart raced with a mix of exhilaration and fear, not knowing where the path would lead, yet driven by a force deeper than myself. God had entrusted me with a revelation that held the potential for liberation, and I felt called to share this awakening with urgency. The battle for truth was only just beginning, and I was determined not to stand idly by, but to rise as a beacon of hope and healing in the spiritual war surrounding us. In my life as a doctor, the hustle and bustle of the emergency room in New York was a familiar soundtrack. The urgency, the beeping machines, and the cries of loved ones painted the backdrop of my days. I had always poured my heart into every patient, believing each moment was a chance to provide comfort and healing amidst chaos. However, deep within my soul was a growing emptiness, a nagging sense that something was missing. Long hours and the struggles of life and death hammered at my spirit, and I found myself drawn into quiet moments of reflection. It became increasingly clear that my adherence to religious norms was creating a rift between my duty to care for others and my own spiritual needs. I felt trapped in a cycle of expectation, questioning if the faith I had practiced truly offered the peace it promised. One particularly chaotic night, something shifted. An emergency case came in, a young woman, bleeding profusely from an accident. The adrenaline surged, but amid the frantic activity, I felt myself drifting into a void, almost as if the world around me faded away. In a surreal moment, I found myself standing in an expansive desert, surrounded by blinding light. And then I saw him, Jesus, standing before me, radiating love and peace. As he called my name, a wave of warmth enveloped me, washing away the doubts and fears that had plagued my heart for so long. In that instant, the pain of my struggles dissolved, revealing the deeper truths of existence that had long been hidden from my view. Jesus began to share profound revelations, unveiling the hidden agenda behind the chaos that ruled our lives. I witnessed flashes of the spiritual war that waged not just within me, but within our world. He spoke of the deceptions created by the elite, the manipulation that kept people divided and in fear. I saw how faith, something meant to liberate and unite, had been contorted into a tool for control, twisting the very essence of spirituality into a mechanism of oppression. The anguish of people caught in this trap echoed in my heart. The wars, the divisions, the endless suffering were all fabricated structures, serving only the interests of those in power. It became painfully clear that my role as a doctor needed to transcend physical healing. It had to embrace the deeper spiritual landscape of my patients' lives. As I drifted back to consciousness, the cold air of the ER hit me, snapping me back to the hectic reality around me. But everything felt different now. The encounter with Jesus had given me clarity, an urgent call to share the revelation I had received. I knew I could no longer operate solely within the confines of traditional beliefs. Each moment with my patients became an opportunity to shed light on the truths that had been revealed to me. I began asking deeper questions, encouraging them to reflect upon their beliefs and the hidden forces shaping their realities. The compassion I had always felt shifted into something more potent, a desire to awaken their understanding of the spiritual war we were all enduring. However, the fear of rejection loomed large. I wrestled with the weight of my family's expectations and the fear of being branded a heretic. My father's voice echoed in my mind, rebuking me for straying from our faith. Every day, the battle of conviction waged on within me. Could I bear to lose the relationships that had defined my existence? Yet, the urgency to spread this awakening, to help others recognize the truth behind the deception, became increasingly compelling. I found refuge and strength in small gathering circles, where others shared their experiences and awakened truths. Together we formed a bond rooted in exploring the depth of faith, free from judgment, igniting a spirit of community that illuminated our paths. As we engaged in conversations about the manipulation of religion by those in power, I felt the collective energy rising among us. The stories shared ranged from personal awakenings to encounters that mirrored my own. Each mindful discussion deepened our understanding and connected us to the larger narrative of humanity's spiritual journey. The urgency to extend this message into the broader community grew stronger, yet doubts still loomed in the background. I held on to the hope that, amid adversity, I could inspire courage in others to question the narratives that dictated their lives. The path ahead remained uncertain and fraught with potential rejection, but the call to act was undeniable. The time for awakening was now, and I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead to bring forth the light that Jesus had revealed to me. Now that you've journeyed with me through my story, I must urge you to reflect on your own path. Have you ever felt the inexplicable tug of something beyond this world, a whisper in your soul that something deeper is at play? Like the shadows of fear and doubt lurking just beneath the surface of your daily life, waiting to be confronted with the light of truth? When I stood before Jesus, everything transformed. I realized the spiritual war we're grappling with isn't merely a personal struggle, it's a collective awakening calling to everyone. We are all entangled in this web of deception layers, carefully woven to keep us oblivious to our shared humanity. I invite you to ask yourself, what hidden truths are yearning to surface in your own life? What chains do you need to break for the sake of your own peace? I want to hear your stories, your reflections. Share with me in the comments. Have you ever felt a moment of clarity that changed your perspective on your beliefs or the world around you? Your experiences matter, and they might just be the inspiration someone else needs. And if this narrative sparks something within you, don't leave without subscribing to Truth from Beyond. Hit that notification bell so you won't miss the revelations coming your way. Together, we'll explore even more stories of awakening and truth that can illuminate our paths during these turbulent times. In the next video, we'll delve into another powerful encounter where love shattered barriers of fear, leading to profound understanding. I'm Hamza. Thank you for allowing me to share this sacred space with you. Remember, as you move forward in your journey, the truth is always waiting for those brave enough to seek it.